We are delighted that you're joining us for another podcast of Wake Up Aligned, and it is the podcast for chiropractors where we get to talk about chiropractic lifestyle, and topics of interest. You can contact us through our email, and that is mailbag@amcfamily.com. All right, so Tom, we get to pick up part 2 of Accentuate the Positive. Listeners, if you have stumbled upon this one, this is the second part of a conversation that started last week. So please make sure that you look and search your podcast platform for Accentuate the Positive Part 1. Listen to that one first and then come back to this one. So affirmations is something we've talked about many, many times. And there we are coming right back to a foundational stone, to a cornerstone of, if you want to accentuate your positive and you want to eliminate your negative, affirmations need to be part of your daily. You're not going to find, you're not going to be able to deal a way out of that, basically. It's like you have to put that work in. Optimism, hope, there's faith. There's a lot of things that you can also bring to the table that are just attributes and characteristics of your life. I want to have hope. I don't want to have hope for a crummy future, a negative future. I want to have hope for a positive future, right? So hope for me is one of those things that puts me in a more positive mindset. It helps me accentuate the positives. We were talking about Facebook, and so many people are guilty of comparison on Facebook. Like, I don't have what they have. I don't have the life that they have. Look at them on vacation. If you want to accentuate your positives and really acknowledge your blessings and lean into them, spend some time in the divorce court. Not as a plaintiff or a defendant. Spend some time in the divorce court. Spend some time at a hospice. Spend some time in the children's hospital. Right. There are things going on every single day in your town that people would give anything to trade places with you, to deal away from their life and get the life that you have. And we have to do that, right? Your dad taught that principle to me. I'm sure he taught it to you. It's not so bad that it couldn't be worse. I find great comfort in that, right? Even if you're going through some bad times, because life is going to come at you, it's going to deal you a bad hand once in a while. There's just going to be some things that happen that are absolutely outside of your control. You've prayed, I hope this cup passes from me, but it hits you. Well, what are you going to do in that moment, right? It's not so bad it couldn't be worse. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of essence to that. So I'd wanted to just add a couple of layers onto that affirmations. It's not like affirmations is the end all be all, but it's certainly a big part of that effort.
We started by saying the world doesn't stop. And the world is not just the world coming at you. A lot of times it's just you coming at you. You battle yourself and you get wrapped up into what you just said. The envy, the keeping up with the Joneses, and the arrogance. And inside of chiropractic, the arrogance of technique, philosophy, no philosophy,
patient visits.
Oh my gosh, we go on and on and on. You get so wrapped up into yourself. It's not about you, for God's sakes. Right. It's not about you. The word that came to me as you were talking about is hard to do affirmations, hard to walk in that world of thankfulness. It was a wonderful way of you saying it. It's like there's a lot of people that would trade places with your worst situation, right? But it's hard to do any of that without backing up and realizing you're not all that. It's not about you. And it's hard to reset your affirmations without some humility. And that was the word. I'm like, humbleness is the biggest key. Most people would miss that, right? When you get in a position of leadership, real leadership, I'm not talking, I'm the doctor, you're the staff, you do what I tell you to do because I've got the Porsche. Now, that's not leadership.
Right.
That's arrogance. No, true leadership is found in humility. And most people would miss that because leadership, you put yourself second, or you go forward, right? True leadership is I lead you onto the battlefield. I don't lead you onto the battlefield because I'm better than I will lead you because I'm there. I'm going to fight the fight for you, right? That's leadership. And leadership starts with humility. And how do you start with humility? Is listeners, listen up. Admit that you're not all that. Admit that the world is coming at you. Admit that there's burdens. Admit that there's struggles. Just admit that you need help. And the first place to get help, right? I mean, that's what we're here for, Shannon. Our heart's there to serve and heart to make a difference. But the best place to start is in that mirror. What are you saying to that mirror? Because you can't lie to the mirror. You can lie and fool your friends. You can lie your colleagues, even your patients. You can fool everybody. You can fool some family members, friends. You don't fool yourself. You know, when you get quiet and you look into that mirror, you know if you're a liar. You know if you're deceitful. You know if you're full of envy. You know if you're false, arrogant. All the things that we know. How do you change that? I'm not saying I don't have had some of those things, right? We all have.
Sure.
We're all in the same world. But how do you adjust that? You write down all those things that you self-talk about yourself, those self-reflection, and you can't write this in 30 minutes. It should probably take you a week or two to really write down all the negative thoughts, all the arrogant things that I just talked about, all the greed, all the envy, all the jealousy, all the bitterness, all the resentment, all the betrayal, all the things that you stack up of, I deserve this because somebody did that to me, or somebody thought that. All those things, get it all written out. And then just, regardless of whether you believe it or not, just write the 180.
Right.
I am forgiven. I am humble. I am a servant. I am a leader. I am
appreciative.
I'm appreciative. I am valuable. I am beautiful. All the things, right? Right. You're not going to believe it. It's okay. Now start saying that to that mirror every morning. I am this. I am that. For the first 45 days, you're going to think Tom Owen is absolutely nuts. He's an idiot. He's a fool, right? Celebrating our heroes.
Yeah.
You know, you said some of those big wigs have come along and seen that, and they're like, what? I'll do this? Yeah. Well, I didn't start that way, right? You had to develop into that. But you do that for 45 days, and then after about the 45th, 60th day, something magical starts to happen. And you all of a sudden, you don't believe it yet. You just go, well, maybe I can see what they're talking about. And then, isn't it true, Shannon? You've been through this too many times, right? We've watched it. About the 90th, 120th day, they can't be convinced otherwise, can they? Now they can't let up, and they have to keep tweaking it. But that's how you truly write your own affirmations for yourself, because your affirmations are different than mine.
That's absolutely right.
And on down the road, and you and I are in different seasons, and so are the listeners. So hopefully they can take that. I mean, I know typically we don't like to make these shows into lessons or teachings, but this is a subject that it makes the fastest impact than other. Everybody thinks it's procedural and systematic, and there's aspects of it. Yeah, I mean, certainly
you got to have good procedure,
right? You got to. Let's not be foolish.
Yeah,
right. It is business, but whatever's locked inside between those two ears is going to control it all, and you're not going to outgrow the concept.
As you were talking about all those characteristics, those negatives, I know that we're over. We'll do a two-parter. As you were talking about all those negatives, all those characteristics of the bitterness and the anger and the jealousy, and I just had in my mind a large field, like a large farm, right? So everything is planted except for this one plot, this one square, right? And all those other plants are growing and germinating, whatever. And as the wind blows, it's going to blow those seeds that are ripe. It's going to blow that into that land that's not been farmed. Well, the more of that negativity and pride and jealousy and bitterness and all, the more fertile your ground is for all those negative seeds to come in and take root and start overtaking that plot. See, we have to be sure that we are not creating an environment internally that's receptive to that negativity, because it's like we started, it's all around. And even people like me who take great care to put up walls and barriers and not allow it in, it still gets in.
It's there from birth.
Exactly. So if I'm not taking care of my own internal environment and getting all that ugliness out, all that ugliness is just fertilizing that soil, waiting for the negative seed to pop in. And before you know it, it'll take root.
Yeah. I have to do, you just, as you started telling that analogy, it made me think of an old parable my dad taught me. And I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever heard this, when he said, you ever hear the pastor that came and visited the farmer? And the pastor walks up and says, my goodness, what a beautiful field of harvest that you and God have here to get together. And the farmer says, yeah, and you should have seen the shape he had it in before I got here. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, see, God provides us the principles.
Yeah.
God provides us the seed principle. God provides the fertile soil of the mind. But who's the one that's responsible for tilling that ground? Who has to prep that ground?
That's right.
Who has to seed that ground? Who has to water those seeds? Who has to pick the weeds out as they come in? Because they surely are. Just as you gave that analogy.
Yep.
So it's a funny one, but it's so true. You have to farm the ground of the mind.
Absolutely right. Yeah. All right. We have media fast. We got to talk about media fast before we wrap this thing up. Walk the listeners through what a media fast is, how to do it, how long to do it. What's the purpose of a media fast?
Well, a media fast is basically, it's tough. I mean, it's tougher than it was 20 years ago, probably the first time I ever taught it. But a media fast is what it sounds like. It is literally locking yourself off from all electronics. That's your phone, except for, texting that has to do with business, or emails that are business related. All other emails you don't open texts. It's obviously no social media. It's no TV. It's no radio. It's no listening to music to unwind. It's no listening to inspirational music as you go into the office. It's a true blocking of all input from there. Now, the media fast is that's hard enough, but the key is don't, nature abhors a vacuum. You don't leave it alone. Now, do the media fast for 45 to 60 days. All right. But in that 45 to 60 days, isn't that a great opportunity to now work on those affirmations we were talking about? Realign your affirmations. And now, what would happen to your mind mentally that if you were feeding it nothing but, here's my Bible, I'm reading my word, do it whatever way you want to. I'm not preaching. Right. But feed it with faith, feed it with love, feed it with joy, then feed it with expectations, high expectations. Only high expectations equal high results. Medium expectations equal low results. Low expectations equal no results. So what kind of expectations are you carrying into your day? Well, the fastest route to the innate is to shut off all outlets of innate. So that's what a media fast is. It's books. Okay. Books is a form of media. Sure. It's not just electronic, but it's no phone calls. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very uncomfortable. Your skin is probably going to crawl. Really, in today's world, because we're so addicted to it. I mean, anyway, well, I can go down that road of different examples, but that's what a media fast is. But while you're media fasting, it's how do I develop my quiet time? Don't just create a void, fill it, create quiet time, get into the habit of prayer, get into the habit of sitting still and getting into your subconscious and writing down expectations, writing down, redefining your goals. and resetting affirmation. So by the time you come out of that media fast, now all of a sudden you're feeding so much good stuff, it's going to be difficult. It gives you a fighting chance.
I love it. It's hard, right? I used to be a news junkie, right? That's why I am, the former smoker is the zealot against cigarettes and stuff. That's me now. Because I used to be really, really involved in that and crave it. And I'd want to know my news of the day. And it's important that I keep up with this. I couldn't change a darn thing about any of that stuff. And it was doing nothing but corrupting me. So when I gave it up for good. And now I'm very zealous about it. The one thing that isn't included in Media Fast is being careful with who you surround yourself, who you communicate with. You make sure if you're going to do this Media Fast, go ahead and take note of the people who generally pull from you, right? All they have is negativity, doom and gloom, woe is me, the future is horrible. You better be careful to limit your exposure to them as well, right? You want to hang around positive people. You want to hang around affirming people. You want to hang around encouraging people. Because, again, even though you have a media fast, that negativity finds a way to get in there, right?
And 87% of the population, 87% of the population are not capable of being the affirming, to being the positive, to not being the negative. So when you say it that way, understand that probably at least 8, maybe 9 out of every 10 people you have to limit their exposure and their influence on you, because most people are walking around with limited beliefs.
Absolutely.
Most people are not aware of these principles, these guidelines, right? And it's called crabs in your bucket. It's probably a whole different show sometime on crabs in your bucket. You can get a bucket full of crabs, 10 crabs in a bucket, and don't have to put a lid on it, because ain't nobody getting out, because every crab's going to reach up and pull the next crab down. Put one crab in a bucket and that crab's going to get out. You better put a lid on it. You follow me? You don't get up and look over the rim of the bucket and see the horizon and see the real world out there and see that your freedom's right there overboard in the water. They don't get to do that, because most times the other crabs are going to pull you down in one way or another. They might not even trying to do it intentionally. They might be trying just to say, well, that's the way life goes. Don't get your hopes up too much. It's a good life just to settle. They're not meaning to hurt you, but what's our expectations? It's, what's our journey going to be like? The word says, the Bible here says that I'm going to run a race, right? And I'm going to run the race well. I want to go across that finish line with no tread on the tires.
Right.
I don't want nothing. I don't want nothing. My bearings, the wheel bearings are about to go, right? That's what I want to run it with nothing left. I'm not going to do that by following around with a bunch of crabs in one bucket, and I'm never going to see what's outside and the effect I can have. And by the way, my motto, what I live by, everybody wants to know, well, what's Tom's main affirmation? My number one affirmation every morning is to remember that all that is left are the lives we've touched, and to what extent they were changed. And when you think of that, it doesn't matter what house I live in. It doesn't matter that I have boats and things of that nature. I got my buddy, Dr. JP's in the studio with us today. He's been on my boat. Pretty good boat, right? But it has nothing to do with the boat. All that's going to be left when I'm nothing but dust are the lives we've touched and to what extent they were changed. You have that kind of affirmation, you have that kind of outlook, you're going to do all right.
I'm glad that you shared that motto. I'm glad that they get to see that picture of you, that insight into who you are and how you approach your everyday. We have a few minutes here. I want to just do some more honorable mentions, because we have a lot of people. We mentioned Dr. West and the affirmations and the good things that are happening for her. Many people are aware of or know the Yachter brothers in Florida, and they have done a marvelous transformation in their not only in their clinics and their business, but the culture of that business. That's what's so impressive about it to me. And their missed appointments are now under complete control. They're actually doing better with missed appointments than some people who never had that very loose structure with their patient management and patient relationships from the get-go. And that's very impressive. It's easier to start right and keep it right than it is to start with a challenge and make it right. And they have put in tons of work through their mentorship, their CA coaching. Everybody's rowing in the right direction. And
they've done some serious heavy lifting.
It's incredible.
It's very almost impressive.
If you looked at their stats 4 or 5 years ago and you looked at their stats today, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't think it was possible. But
it's not just the collections.
Oh, no, right? Not at all.
The heavy lifting is they have changed and transformed. And that is hard to do after you've been in practice doing, the volume.
That's right.
The volume model
Mm-hmm.
that there's no system to it. There's it's just all about seeing 200 new patients a month and keeping them for 3 or 4 visits. Their compliance is up. They're not having to work nearly as hard. They're not stressed. That does not happen easily.
Mm-hmm.
That is commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys, both of them, just top-notch quality, character, integrity. They are chiropractors. But for them to, at that point, they're not small potatoes. That takes we talked earlier in the show about humility.
Mm-hmm.
To be 30 years in and to already be very successful, it wasn't like they were broke.
No.
Right? They were doing well. But to tune in to their purpose and to and have the humility of, you know what, there is a better way. And even after 25, 30 years, I'm going to change. That's hard to do.
It is.
Another shout out is just recently that we did is Dr. Darlene Euler.
Absolutely.
I'm so super proud of that lady.
Mm-hmm.
She's been in practice 25 years or more. And to make the changes, it's hard to do that, folks. For you young doctors that are just out for 6 months, 3 years, whatever, you just don't understand. When you get to my age and you make those kind of changes, that's difficult. So kudos to Dr. Euler, and also back at you with the actors. I just love those guys.
As you were talking about you young doctors, I had the vision of Tom out there on his rocking chair at the nursing home. He's young whippersnapper doctor. He's got no idea what it takes. I hope I live long enough to see that. I do. Yes, sure I do. Matt Eichen, Mr. Positivity. If there ought to be a positivity award for Matt Eichen, you and I have known Matt Eichen for over 20 years now. And he recently just had his best collections month of his career. And that's great as a standalone, like that's worthy of praise and acknowledgement. But he's also dealing with upheaval and chaos in his personal life. So to be able to do that in spite of the personal challenges and setbacks, that makes it even more impressive. But never forget, Matt Eichen, Mr. Positivity, way back when he opened up his first clinic, he did all this work, he did all this surveys, he did all the things that you go in to build that office and get it launched successful that first month. Now, was it 2 or 3 weeks after he had opened, the rains came down and the floods came up and his office was underwater, right? He was actually interviewed by the local news media, and they were like, so has this flood affected your business? And, they were looking for the doom and gloom. And what's Matt Eichen say? I just want to take a moment and praise God. That was Matt Eichen. And I still remember that story 20 plus years later. So shout out to Matt Eichen for the great results for his month, but also just maintaining that positive attitude, right? That's an absolute living example of what we're talking about on this podcast.
Easy to pull for a guy like Dr. Matt.
How could you not?
Always one of my favorites.
How could you not?
Good friend.
Couple more. Dr. Jack Berg in Montana.
Yeah.
Jack Berg has had his best collections month of his career as well. And that's a really wonderful thing. Jack is a great man, right? He and his family are involved in Boy Scouts and scouting, and he does just about everything he can do for his family. And he has a vision for his practice and his business, but he's going to keep that work-life balance. He's going to keep it all in perspective. But to see him do well and reach a pinnacle, no, that's really, really awesome. Really proud of Dr. Jack Berg. And last but not least, Dr. Ryan Parrish. Dr. Ryan Parrish, yeah, Tom is smiling across the table here. I mean, a big old grin. Dr. Ryan Parrish had his best month of his career.
That's awesome.
That he's ever had.
That's awesome. I mean, he's got such a story, and to hear he and his wife tell that story of where they were when they were, I mean, they were down and out. It was tough times when they were down in Florida. And then they moved to the northern Alabama and obviously went through the whole right start. But for those of you that are out there that are facing those situations, like, well, that's kind of hopeless and there is no future and how's this going to work out? And I don't know how I could ever have the courage to open my own practice. You ought to call and talk to Dr. Ryan Parrish.
You got that right.
And hear his story, because it's one of inspiration, and just such a good guy. Both of them, just the husband and wife. I just love them to death, and I'm thrilled that there's still good people out there that deserve the opportunity. Now you have to do the work. Mm-hmm. You have to do the heavy lifting, and I'm not talking procedural work. I'm talking about doing the work. Internal work, changing those mindsets, changing those concepts. And he has done a lot of that.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Super thrilled to hear that about him. And Dr. Berg, one of my favorites.
Listeners, I know that you've been inspired, empowered, and motivated, because I am inspired, empowered, and motivated from this 2 podcast series. I have a feeling you'll be listening to this one time and time again. And that's the great thing about the podcast. It is always ready for you when you're ready for it. Join us next time on Wake Up Aligned. Follow our show. You can share it with friends, of course. And we'd love for you to contact us at mailbag@amcfamily.com. In addition, you're always invited to attend or join us at a summit. Of course, registration is required. And we would love for you to check out the loads of free content we provide to social media every single week. Until next time.